now we are ready to dive into what I think is the most important concepts in React called state. So state is a data that a component can hold over time. It's necessary for information that it needs to be remembered throughout the application lifecycle. You can think of a state as like a React component's brain. It holds information about components that can change over time. In this code example, for example, here, let's assume that we have this product list here. Each product here is a card component. If you have, for example, to track if someone's added a product to the shopping cart or not, for example, in the e-commerce websites, you have to use a state. So if we use a regular variable, something like const, a boolean variable here has added to be true, for example, that means this product, it's been added to the shopping cart or not. Okay, and then use it as a prop here in the cards component here in the parent component of the application has added, and the value also has added, which is true. Actually, well, this won't work because React doesn't know that something has changed and it won't update the DOM accordingly. Okay, that's because the React rendering process relies on state and props to decide when and how to re-render the component. I mean by the re-rendering the component means to change in the component view in the UI here. Hook. Let's remove this one from here and this one. So without any further ado, let's create our first state. A state allows users to interact with each card and allows them to add or remove the card's product from or to the shopping list. I will start with our primary application component here, which is the parent component of this child component here card that is being passed and reused here inside the parent component. So first, I wanted to mention the rule for creating a useState hook, which is the useState hook. It should be defined at the top level of the component here. So we cannot define it inside the if statement or in a loop or in a function. Okay. So in order to use state in a component, we do it in 3 steps. First of all, we add a new state variable, and then we update the piece of state in some event handler. Lastly, we use it in the code, usually in JS6. First of all, let's define our state by saying const equal assign to the useState. Okay, enter, and immediately automatically it will import it here our useState hook from the React. Okay, if it's not imported yet, please import them manually. And between the square brackets here, we have to destructure the argument of the function of useState here in the array here. And keep in mind that in React, everything starts with verb use, that is refers to a hook. And React has many different hooks that allows you create and build your application more simply and more scalability. We will learn about them one by one, but now let's concentrate and focus on the useState hook. So React being one of the most important ones, and the way which state works is that you first destructure the actual variable name here. In our case, let's name it, for example, has added as a boolean variable in this case. And then as a second parameter here in the destructure array, you can get the setter function that you can use it to update the state. In this case, let's name it set has added. This is just a names I thought out of the spot, but you can follow this pattern. Okay, so first you give the variable name, it can be anything, and then use the set here as a prefix to the same name of the variable as a setter function. So this is the common practice. And now we have destructured our argument in the array here. Okay, but we are not done yet. So within the parentheses here, you can also provide the default value of that state. Okay, in our case, the state is a boolean, so the initial state here, let's make it false. So the variable value here, or the default value here, can be anything such as like a string, function, or even a complex object. So if it is, for example, a number, the initial state, you can make it 0 or whatever number that you want. Make it a false again here, a boolean false. Now let's move in to the card component, which is the product card. Below the title here, let's remove this calculation. So below the title here, let's make a button. But before that, as you remember, we cannot return in a component 2 elements or 2 JSX code, so we have to wrap them into a React fragment here, or just wrapping them in a div. Okay, let's wrapping them in a fragment here. Below that, let's create in our button element here. Okay, and it says, for example, add to cart. Save it, and here we go. It pops up here in the UI. So the second thing of using state is updating. So you have to write an event handler called onClick, the event listener, and you can do it right here in the button tag here, onClick. Within the curly braces here, we can define what happens when this button was clicked. Okay, now the third step of using state, which is to use the code in the JSX. So we will define a callback function within it like that, meaning when this button was clicked, this function will be executed, but more specifically what we will write inside the curly braces. Simply we'll call the set has added setter function, and I wanted to set it to be true. Okay, now this set has add function here, it does not doing anything because we did not have declared this use has add function state here in the same component. So it's declared here in the app parent component here, and the beauty and the complexity of the React comes here, which is deciding where you wanted to define a piece of state. So if the state, for example, has to do something with these cards here, all of them together, so it will make sense to put our state here in the component application. Or if we have, for example, another state, for example, here saying removing card or something like that, then it will make sense to have that state in the app. But in this case, the has add state here will be different for each of the cards. So it make more sense if we take this state layer from here and paste it into the card component. If we save this, so you can see, as you know, is a button here appears right here, right there in the UI. But let's style the page. So let's style the button further by heading over to the index.css and styling all the buttons in the page by giving them button here, by giving them a border to be transparent, for example, and font size 30 pixel here, and also let's make background color here, let's make it this color, basic, sorry, the border here to be none, and border radius 10 pixel here, the width to be 100%. Okay, so that will all over the width of the UI of our view, and the text align to be center as it is, and also cursor pointer. Okay, and some padding here for pixel. Now if you click on the button, for example, nothing will happen or changes. So how we can change the UI depending on the state? Well, simply you can do some conditional logic. Okay, instead of simple returning text here says add to card, you can do something like this, removing all the text, open a new dynamic, a block of code similar of what we did here with the title. So now between the curly braces here, we write a ternary condition says has added. So if it's this state variable here has added here to be, for example, true, we want the text to be says, for example, delete from card. And if it's false or if it's not true, make the text of the button will be add to cart. Save it, and here we go. This one changed because I've already clicked on it. If we click on this also, it will be changed to delete cart. So in the UI, always the btn here will say, for example, add to cart by default. If we click on them on the text, will change to be deleted from cart, and they will stay like that way until I reload the page. So they back to the add to cart. Okay, that's a very important thing. I would like to mention that the state is not persistent across the browser reload. So as soon as you reload the page, the component will re-render, and then the state will return to the default value or the initial value, which is in our case, which is false. The variable here, it will be false, and then it will appear that message on the text. Okay, now here is a question how we can delete from card. So currently we are always setting the state of has added here to be true. So how we can figure out if the state is already has added or switching it to be false, so text will be deleting from card. Okay, well, we can make set as add function here, state variable here to be not true from here. Now turn back to the btn UI here in the UI and click to see it will switch immediately whenever we click. Okay, so you see switch the text of the button here, and it happens instantly without the browser reload. That's because where the state change, React automatically re-render the component to reflecting the new data on the screen. So value starts at false, as you know, which is the default value. And when you click on the button here, the set has added function, setter function here, it will update our has added state variable here, and it will switch and set the state to the opposite of the previous value. So React then re-renders only that component, which is in our case the clicked component. And that's the beauty of React, is when clicking on a button that changes the state, it only changes the card it has changed its state, not all of the card elements here on the screen. And then the update has added value is use the JSX to update either the text to be add or delete the card. Okay. But if we kept this state within the application component, here is the parent component of the card component, okay, and passed it as a prop here for each of the cards here, we wouldn't be able to change the button text here for each card separately. In conclusion, like having it here state, for example, in the card component here, is allow the card component to manage its own state independently, making the component reusable and isolated. I hope this definition makes sense to you. And the syntax which we use it with the useState, and as I told you when introduced the hooks useState, is just a hook. Okay, hooks are special functions in React that lets you tab in React features like state management. In this case, there are many different types of hooks. useState for managing state, useEffect for handling side effects like data fetching, useContext for sharing data across components, and we have also the useCallback for optimizing the callback functions. And there are plenty and a lot of hooks as well, and we will go for them one by one in this full React tutorial.